Hello and welcome to this video on cell membranes. Let's get started. A cell membrane is sort of like the bag that holds all the contents of the cell. Now this is a very simplistic description, so we'll go into more detail. It has a number of important roles, such as differentiating between the inside and the outside of the cell. You could also think of them as, differentiating between us versus them. And so they also the cell membrane is also responsible for maintaining fluidity of the cell, because human cells, humans move, so the cells have to be able to sort of change shape, but they also want to stay they want to stay together, so they have to have structure under stress. And they are responsible for bringing nutrients in and waste products out, and they're responsible for cell signaling and just maintaining the conditions necessary for the cell's survival. So they are primarily made of five things: phospholipids, glycoproteins, glycolipids, membrane proteins, and cholesterol. And I've abbreviated these with these two-letter sort of symbols. And so if we can imagine, this is obviously a generalization of the cell. There's a lot of stuff inside here, and it does not just look like a wall like this. But if we looked at sort of a sample of it, it might look something like this. Now, this is a representation. This is not how a cell actually looks. That would require like an electron microscope. These squiggly things with heads are phospholipids, and sphingolipids. These sort of chainy things with an OH are cholesterol molecules. This guy right here and right here, those are my representation of a glycolipid. These guys here and here are my representation of glycoprotein, and then the guys in blue, or girls, whatever, they don't really have gender, are my representation of membrane proteins. And so let's talk about the different features of these these groups. So our phospholipids are made of have a phosphate and lipids. kind of simplistic, but that's important. And let's see, they have a charged or polar region here that points inside the cell and outside the cell. And they are the main constituent of this phospholipid bilayer. Oftentimes, the cell membrane is referred to as a phospholipid bilayer. We also have glycolipids. So these are made of carbohydrate attached to a lipid. And these are used by cells to sort of recognize self versus non-self. We have glycoproteins, which are made of a carbohydrate attached to a protein. And these are also used for the same self versus non-self recognition, and they are also used by cells to connect to each other and to structures like connective tissue. Each other. Oops. Bad spelling. other, and connective tissue. And then finally, not finally, we have membrane proteins. Which are used for cell signaling, and they are used to transport nutrients. They are used as enzymes, and they are also used for cell adhesion and recognition. And then finally, we have cholesterol, which help maintain fluidity under stress, as well as structure under stress. Structure. So these are the 5 main constituents of a cell membrane, also known as a plasma membrane. And so let's just talk about how this membrane organizes itself. So we could sort of divide this into 2 regions. We have 3 regions. So we have the polar region here, as well as a polar region here. Now this could also be charged depending on what like the specific groups are attached to these, but we're generally call it the polar region. And then we have the non-polar region. And so what is important about these is that the polar regions, both on the outside and inside, interact with water. Or the interstitial fluid, or the cytosol, but those are mostly made of water. So, for example, the phospholipid heads have polar and charged groups, and the cholesterol has a polar OH group. The glycolipids have polar carbohydrate groups. The proteins will have polar groups out here, maybe charged groups. Glycoproteins will have polar carbohydrate groups, and so on and so forth. And so these lead to stability. They sort of stabilize each other with via electrostatic attractions or hydrogen bonding between themselves and water. So these are nice and stable out here. And then on the inside, everything that is sort of non-polar, which is not attracted to water, sort of gets pushed onto the inside. And so these inside groups interact with each other by what's called a hydrophobic attraction. In reality, this means that the hydrophobic regions are minimizing contact with water and the polar regions, so that water can form the maximum number of hydrogen bonds, which leads to stability. And that's sort of like the big rule in the universe. The universe likes things to be more stable. So anything that will add to stability, like having polar regions interacting with water and non-polar regions sort of pushing away from water or keeping away from water, will lead to more stability. I would suggest that you sort of do some study into the specifics of phospholipids, glycolipids, membrane proteins, and cholesterol, just because this is obviously only a 10-minute video, and this is just scratching the surface of it. Things that can pass through the membrane very quickly are small things like water. Water easily goes in and out. Oxygen can easily go in and out. Carbon dioxide. Very small things that are not charged or not polar can pass through. So here is my works cited, and thank you for listening and watching this video.